So hello and welcome to another Valorant map analysis video. This is actually going to be the last one of the series. We've been through the attack on all the maps. Now this is our last defending map on Split, and we'll talk about the map and what's going on here from the defender side. This one I feel like is relatively easy. In fact, if I had to guess, just based off my own experiences and, having watched, streams of people play, I feel like Split is probably the map that people struggle to attack on the most when it comes to ranked games, and from what I've seen of myself and other people, it tends to be the hardest. And I feel like so speaking from a defender's point of view, this one probably won't be too difficult, and I'll probably just be saying pretty normal things, pretty basic things, because I do feel like, particularly in ranked games where people can be impatient and they just want to get me in a fight, I came to shoot, it won't go well for the attackers a lot of time when they have that mentality, which I feel is the default mentality of quite a few players. But anyway, here is the Metacomp, and actually, in terms of Metacomp, there isn't a set meta on Split, to be honest. There was no agent that was 100% like we've seen on other maps. I mean, Icebox has 4 agents that are basically 100%, and there wasn't even anyone over 90. Astra was the highest at 86, and then the next highest was Raze at 68. So this map is all over the place in terms of meta, where a lot of different experimentation from pro teams. I mean, Ascend famously, used Omen as their only controller on this map and won against Gambit in the final on the last map. So yeah, it seems like a lot of things are possible, but of course I'm not going to talk about specific agent abilities anyway, so no need to worry too much about that. But it seems like you can play quite a few different things on Split. Seems very possible. So with that said, let's talk about Split and let's talk about the different choke points. So obviously we have this one on B main here. We tend to have this one into an entrance to Heaven, the entrance to Vents, this entrance to A Heaven as well, and then of course going through A main. But there is a caveat with this, because what you can do is play a bit more aggressive towards A, and I would recommend this because you can often turn this into a choke point as well. And by turning this into a choke point, what you will find is that you turn what is essentially 5 choke points into 4. So if you can turn 5 choke points into 4, that's a pretty good thing. And you will normally have 2 people. I mean, you almost certainly will have 2 people grouped there anyway. So it's not like you're only sending one person out to, try their best. You've got 2 people who, with, if it's the right kind of agents, with the right kind of utility, should be pretty okay to actually try and put up a bit of a fight here. And if you can keep the attackers locked behind this choke point, well, then now you're only defending 4 choke points, and that's going to be beneficial to you. Things like if this person needs to reload, you've still got someone there, right? It's just beneficial to try and do that as the defenders. And so I would recommend, trying to make this the choke point if possible. Now, it's not the end of the world if you can't, and you have to fall back, which often will be the case. But if in the early rounds, you can start aggressive, and it might even be that you put 2 people up here towards the ramp side anyway, and just leave the A main clear, and, just fight this. And, just try your best. It's not the end of the world. You still have plenty of options to fall back. It's, it's not too bad if you have to fall back. But I do think that getting aggressive here on A main will be somewhat beneficial if you can turn this into a choke point. And then we often see a similar thing happening on mid as well, where we have 2 choke points here on mid also. But again, we often see it with a Sage Wall here, or whatever it might be, whatever utility you can use to potentially turn this into the choke point, or, anywhere really in mid that is not these 2 things. If you can make them cross something that's not going to be easy for them beforehand, and as I mentioned, the Sage Wall is the most common version of that, well then again, if you're doing both of these, well again, that 5 has all of a sudden turned into 3 choke points, and defending 3 choke points with 5 defenders is going to be pretty easy. That should benefit you, and that should be, not too bad for you at all. And I feel like this is a reason why people struggle to attack on this map, is because I think people do this automatically. You'll often see a Sage Wall in mid. You'll often see people get a bit aggressive towards A main here from the defender side. And this is why I feel like attackers will struggle, because they'll run into the fact that 5 defenders are defending 3 choke points, and that will not feel good a lot of the time. And that's, just a benefit for us as the defenders. And then one of these choke points as well, normally the one where, maybe one person will be left alone, this B main choke point isn't that big. It's not that hard, I don't think, to defend. It's quite a small choke point in general, and there's plenty of different positions to play. You can be, sort of back on the right, back on the left, close on the right. There's plenty of different positions as well to play, and you'll often get support from Heaven as well. So it can be pretty difficult if you can lock it down to be like, this is a choke point, this is a choke point, and this is your choke point. Well, no wonder that teams are struggling to attack on this map because, you know, if you have 5 players defending these 3 choke points, it's going to go pretty well. However, another thing I will mention on this map, and I do think that this is very important, is I do see some people put players towards vents and leave one person on heaven. And I have made a separate video about this, about why this is a bad idea, but I'll just reiterate it right now. And it's not necessarily always a bad idea, right? If you've got like an op or something, you know, it would probably be the Sky and the Jet swapped at this point. But if you have like a Jet op, it's perfectly fine to, you know, go in vents and take this shot, you know, because the idea is that that op is probably going to either net a kill or, you know, make mid a less viable place for the attackers to go in general. They might feel like, let's not run into the op. You know, that's something that they might consider. So, you know, it's not always a terrible idea to do that, but I do think that your default should be to have 2 players in heaven. And the reason for that is, well, if we do put someone in vents, let's say the defenders are attackers, are going for a B split, right? And so they send, let's say they send 3 people towards B main and they send 2 people towards mid. And let's say they smoke this off. They smoke vents off, they send like a molly there or something as well. And all of a sudden, you know, these people are coming towards heaven and these people are coming towards B main. Now, this person here is in a 1v3. This Astra here would be in a 1v3, right? And so, you know, they're probably going to be like, well, I need some help. You know, there's 3 people coming on B main. Like, you know, I can deal with maybe 1, maybe 2, but 3 might be a bit too much for me. So they might feel like, oh, person in heaven, come and support me. So the person in heaven might come and support them. But then obviously what happens is that these 2 people, you know, run up to heaven and they get a free kill on this Jet in the back. And then this Astra is now in a 5v1 essentially, as, you know, the rotates come in and these people are still probably rotating and managing to get across the map. You know, this Astra's in a 5v1 and you're going to lose the round because you're in a 5v3. And you might say, well, what's the opposite way then? Why couldn't they just do the same on vents if you put 2 people in heaven? And I'll show you the difference. So if we have 2 people in heaven, obviously what I just said doesn't really matter because one person will be able to support the player on B and you will still have someone, you know, fighting the people coming up towards heaven. So no one will be dying in the back and everything hopefully will be okay. But what happens if this gets smoked off and this gets mollied off and you know, they come to vents instead and then they come up vents? Well, the problem is with that, and that is still a problem, don't get me wrong, but the advantage of that for the defenders is, 1, these attackers have to cross heaven to get to vents, so there will be probably either some knowledge, you know, or, you know, some way you'll be able to tell, oh, we're smoked off, they might have crossed, right? You can easily communicate that that would be the case, whereas this person in vents, when they get smoked off, they don't know if they've, you know, there's no indication. They could have maybe gone. Like, you can say, oh, maybe they'll be in heaven, but this person has to address the problem on B anyway. So it's kind of all messed up. Whereas this person here has an easy out. This is a very good, safe place for this race to come back to. If they do come up vents, doesn't matter if they're going for an A split. Let's say this Viper is somewhere on site. It doesn't matter if they're doing this. And let's say they even come up here and go through vents. This is a safe space. You know, this is a place that even with the entry through both ways, it's completely safe. You don't have to worry. You know, you're still fine and you're still supporting because to get to this window, you still have a good angle on that. So this Viper isn't going to get caught from the actual heaven side of it. Whereas the problem is that safe space on B is back here, right? And from here, you can't really support the players from the heaven angle, right? Like, the attackers could get to heaven. If you fall all the way back here, you know, the attackers probably then can easily, you know, get towards the ramp and get down towards hell and all of that without you really being able to put up a fight. And the player on B is going to be like, what are you doing? Whereas this player here on A is still helping out. Even though they're in a very passive position, no one is getting to this window still. You know, they're still defending that window, and so this Viper still only has to focus on A main, most likely. And so that's the difference, right? It's just the way the map is laid out. It makes more sense, I think, to put 2 players towards heaven on B. Now, when it comes to rotations and whatnot on this map as well, generally the spawn will be pretty safe. Sometimes you can run into a possibility where, you know, heaven has been overrun and that this crossing here might be a bit dangerous towards the A site. That sometimes will happen, but generally, you know, the spawn is a pretty safe area to be in. You won't have to worry too much about, you know, someone getting there. And as I say, because this is a very safe space, unless if this person will die, right, you'll know if this person dies, then you'll know that maybe spawn might not be that safe. But as long as that person is alive, obviously you'll have good information that is a safe space to come back to, and you'll have good rotations. Now, Normally, I would say, putting up, this is obviously another reason why that Sage Wall is quite common, is it does allow you this fast rotation here, which isn't bad. I will just say, though, that, if players, the attackers are towards a heaven and they're about to go, everyone checks this. Everyone checks towards the vent side. Everyone understands that is a possibility if they don't have someone in mid. So that is something that can happen. But if you do have a bit of utility that allows you to rotate quick through mid, then that's pretty nice as well. And if you do, that will be a much quicker way of getting there than going all the way back through your spawn. But pushing out around the attackers is a bit of a weird one, because obviously there's kind of two lanes. There's obviously the attackers spawn lane, and then there's the sort of next layer of it through the sewers and through all of this. And so it can be a bit risky sometimes, and I know I've run into this situation myself where I've gone for like this flank and maybe gone through sewers or whatnot, and then someone has actually come back from the attackers, someone's at the same time, and we kind of catch each other out, and it's basically who checks who first. And most likely it's gonna be the person on the further back is gonna have the angle on whoever comes out of sewer. So you can get some weird things happening to you if you potentially go for a flank, but I think that most of the time it shouldn't be too much of an issue in general. It is still quite a trek. It's still a long way to go. It's gonna be pretty slow to go all the way around, and there's ropes and all of that as well. And running in sewer is very loud and very obvious of where you are because of the noise it makes. So it will take you a long time. This is a very long flank to have to go on. So unless you start very early, unless you push up very early on either side, it's probably going to be a bit too late by the time. And then I don't actually think that this is that great for you anyway, because as I mentioned, these are pretty small choke points on this map. And now you're in the attacker situation where you're having to penetrate through these pretty small choke points on the map. So it's not that it's a bad thing. And I think if there's multiple of you alive, then it's probably a good thing to come from different angles. But if, it's just you in like a 1v2 clutch situation or something like that, I don't think that going all the way around the map and then trying to, just push in on site will generally be that successful for you unless they have no idea that you're coming from that way. And so that is defending on split. The basics are pretty simple, to be honest. You probably will want some control in mid. If you can control mid, and if you can control this A main and play aggressive towards those two choke points, you will probably have a good day as long as, you're being somewhat ferocious and stopping them at least some of the time. Even if you just stop them some of the time, this will still be very, very productive for you. So, put some utility down in mid. I've seen pro teams tend to use like Viper utility on mid, whether it be like a Viper that goes across like this or something like that. And it's very useful. And the same is true on A main as well. If you can get aggressive towards A main and just force it from 5 choke points to 3, well, then you're probably going to have a really good day. And you're probably going to enjoy defending on this map. This position where Raze is here, back of a heaven, very important position. Always feel free to, if you have given up a bit of space, feel free to come and sit in that corner, and you will be a big boon to your team, because this person on A main then just has to simply worry about the A main choke point, and they don't have to worry about anything else, and they can feel good about themselves still. Put 2 players towards heaven because of that reason that I just mentioned. And yeah, you should be having a pretty good day on split. But that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, you can expect more Valorant VOD reviews and map analysis, agent analysis, all the rest coming soon.